4.1 A.
Huh. Well, I remember reading Catch-22 by, I think it's Joseph Heller. And but I actually started it one night. It was, we had gone to France, to this campsite, and they'd all gone to bed, so I went ahead and started it that night. And when I woke up the next morning, I just sat under a tree in the shade and read the whole thing from start to finish. Yeah, I think that's the only book I've ever done that with. Didn't do it before or since, yeah.
B.
Yes. So there is a book that, well, it's a book from my childhood, and it's called Carbonell by Barbara Slay. And I always really feel that, well, you know, it's got everything. It's got, what's in it? It's got a talking cat, a curse, there's a witch, there's loads of children, and I really just don't understand why this hasn't been made into a children's film or even an animated film, really, to be honest. It's just such a good story, and it's got really great characters, and it's a very visual book. So a lot of the things that it describes, you can just sort of see it, and I think it's a missed opportunity. I really think someone in Hollywood should definitely pick this one up.
C.
Well, there's been a couple of things recently that I've seen on television and then read the book afterwards, and one of those was Big Little Lies. So that was turned into a TV series on HBO, I think. And another was on, it was a film on Netflix, and it was called To All the Boys I've Loved Before, which is a young adult book that I then went on to read afterwards. It wouldn't usually be my thing, but I read the whole series of 3 books. It was fantastic.
D.
So there's a book I've started a couple of times. It's called The Silmarillion by Tolkien. And, it's sort of more information about the world that the Lord of the Rings saga happens in, but I just find the beginning so boring and I cannot finish it. And I know that a friend of mine has told me about some really interesting bits that come up later on, but I cannot get to them. I just keep reading about someone, son of someone, and it gets really, really boring really, really soon. So I think I'll have to try again, but I still have not managed to get to the end of it.
E.
I remember we had to read The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells when I was at school. I was about 10 at the time, and I remember thinking, oh, this looks, really exciting, because I really was into science fiction as a kid. And the cover looked, like really exciting. So I thought, this is going to be fantastic. We're going to be, doing something really this exciting. It's, we're really lucky. But I started it, and it was just too hard for somebody. Well, I think of 10 years old. The vocabulary was difficult. The sentences went on forever. It was really hard to follow them, and it was just frustrating because I was just sort of looking at the words, and I sort of knew when to turn the page, but I hadn't really remembered what I'd just read. So yeah, I didn't get to understand the story at all, and the thing is, it sort of put me off H.G. Wells because I've not really read any since.
F.
Well, I've got to say I've hardly read any classics at all, or any of those ones that win prizes and stuff that get reviewed in papers. So, I've never read To Kill a Mockingbird, for example. All those classics. I think I've read one Jane Austen book. And I feel as if I should address this, maybe read some Charles Dickens and I just can't concentrate on it, to be honest. It's just... And for me, reading is a way of switching off, so I don't really want to read anything that's quite a struggle.
4.2 1.
I just sat under a tree in the shade and read the whole thing from start to finish.
2,
I think it's a missed opportunity.
3,
So that was turned into a TV series on HBO, I think.
4,
It's sort of more information about the world that the Lord of the Rings saga happens in.
5,
I really was into science fiction as a kid. And the cover looked, like really exciting.
6,
For me, reading is a way of switching off, so I don't really want to read anything that's quite a struggle.
4.3, 1,
Haunting.
2,
Moving.
3,
Gripping.
4,
Heartwarming.
5,
Fast moving.
6,
Intriguing.
7,
Thought provoking.
8,
Creepy.
9,
Heavy going.
10,
Implausible.
4.4, Part 1.
What made you want to be a translator?
It was something that I'd done when I was at university, and when I moved to Spain, it was difficult to get a job that wasn't teaching English. So I went back to England and I did a postgraduate course in translation. After doing the course, I swore that I would never be a translator. I thought it would be too boring. But I kept doing the odd translation, and eventually I came round to the idea because I like the idea of working for myself, and it didn't require too much investment to get started. And actually, I enjoy working with words, and it's very satisfying when you feel that you've produced a reasonable translation of the original text.
What are the pros and cons of being a translator?
Well, it's a lonely job, I suppose. You're on your own most of the time. It's hard work. You're sitting there and, you're working long hours. And you can't program things because you don't know when more work is going to come in. And people have always got tight deadlines. It's really rare that somebody will ring you up and say, I want this translation in 3 months' time.
Sure.
That just doesn't really happen.
Yeah. And the pros?
Well, the pros are that it gives you freedom because you can do it anywhere if you've got an internet connection and electricity. And I suppose you can organise your time because you're freelance, you're your own boss, which is good. I like that.
What advice would you give someone who's thinking of going into translation?
I'd say in addition to the language, get a speciality. Do another course in anything that interests you, like economics, law, history, art, because you really need to know about the subjects that you're translating into.
4.5, Part 2.
What do you think is the most difficult kind of text to translate?
Literary texts, like novels, poetry or drama, because you've got to give a lot of consideration to the author and to the way it's been written in the original language.
Right. In order to translate a novel well, do you think you need to be a novelist yourself?
I think that's true, ideally, yes.
And is that the case? I mean, are most of the well-known translators of novels, generally speaking, novelists in their own right?
Yes, I think in English anyway. People who translate into English tend to be published authors, and they tend to specialise in a particular author in the other language. And of course, if it's a living author, then it's so much easier because you can actually communicate with the author and say, what did you really mean here?
Another thing I've heard that is very hard to translate is advertising, for example, slogans.
Yeah, well, with advertising, the problem is that it's got to be something punchy and it's very difficult to translate that. For example, one of the Coca-Cola adverts, the slogan in English was "the real thing," but you just couldn't translate that literally into Spanish. It just wouldn't have had the same power. In fact, it became Sensación de Vivir, which is sensation of living, which sounds really good in Spanish, but it would sound weird in English.
What about film titles?
Oh, they're horrific too. And people always complain that they've not been translated accurately, but of course it's impossible because sometimes a literal translation just doesn't work.
For example?
OK, well, think of the Julie Andrews film, The Sound of Music.
Uh-huh.
Well, that works in English because it's a phrase that like I can hear the sound of music.
Mm-hmm, yes.
But it doesn't work at all in other languages. And in Spanish, it was called sonrisas y lágrimas, which means smiles and tears. In German, it was called meine Lieder, meine Trauma, which means my songs, my dreams. And in Italian, it was tutti insieme appassionatamente, which means, I think, all together passionately, or I don't know, something like that. In fact, I think it was translated differently all over the world.
Do you think there are special problems translating film scripts for the subtitles?
Yes, a lot. There are special constraints. For example, the translation has to fit on the screen as the actor is speaking. And so sometimes the translation is a paraphrase rather than a direct translation. And of course, going back to untranslatable things, really the big problems are cultural and humour, because they're just not the same. You can get across the idea, but you might need pages to explain it, and, by that time the film's moved on. I also sometimes think that the translators are given the film on DVD, rather than a written script, and that sometimes they've simply misheard or they didn't understand what the people said. And that's the only explanation I can come up with for some of the mistranslations that I've seen. Mm-hmm. Although sometimes it might be that some things like humour and jokes, especially ones which depend on wordplay, are just, they're simply untranslatable. Mm. And often it's very difficult to get the right register, for example, with slang and swear words. Because if you literally translate taboo words or swear words, even if they exist in the other language, they may well be far more offensive.
Mm-hmm.
4.6 1.
I made a real faux pas when I mentioned to our boss that Sam had been asked to leave his previous job.
2.
When we were introduced, I had a sense of déjà vu, even though I knew we had never met before.
3.
It might be a bit of a cliché, but I think it's actually true that opposites attract.
4.
Their business venture ended in a complete debacle, and the manager resigned.
5.
She's a real aficionado of Italian opera. She knows a lot about it and goes whenever she can.
6.
Don't overcook the pasta, just until it's al dente.
7.
I'm afraid I felt a certain schadenfreude when my ex-husband told me his girlfriend had left him.
8.
After the earthquake, there was a tsunami warning, but luckily it didn't happen.
4.7 Sounds and the human voice. 1. Sounds. A.
Bang.
Buzz.
Click.
Crash.
Creak.
Crunch.
Drip.
Hiss.
Hoot.
Hum.
Rattle.
Roar.
Screech.
Slam.
Slurp.
Sniff.
Snore.
Splash.
Tap.
Tick.
Whistle.
4.8. 1. Sounds B. 1,
Tick.
2,
Sniff.
3,
Click.
4,
Splash.
5,
Bang.
6,
Creak.
7,
Buzz.
8,
Hoot.
9,
Tap.
10,
Slurp.
11,
Hiss.
12,
Drip.
13,
Roar.
14,
Whistle.
15,
Hum.
16,
Slam.
17,
Crunch.
18,
Snore.
19,
Rattle.
20,
Screech. Crash.
4.9. 2. The human voice. 1,
Scream.
2,
Yell. Hey, you!
3,
Giggle.
4,
Whisper. Please be quiet.
5,
Mumble.
6,
Groan. Aww.
7,
Stammer. My name's Martin.
8,
Sob.
9,
Sigh.
4.10. 1, 2, 3, 4,
Oh.
5, 6,
Jack Pritchard, 131 Wickenden Road.
Seven. 8. 9. 10. 11. 12.
Please be quiet.
4.11. At the beginning of a word. 2 sounds.
Click. Slam. Crash. Slurp. Drip. Snore. Stammer.
3 sounds.
Screech. Scream. Splash.
At the end of a word. 2 sounds.
Shouts. Sniffs. Yelled. Hummed.
3 sounds.
Crunched. Mumble. Crisps. Rattled.
4.12. 1.
She screamed when her friend splashed her in the swimming pool.
2.
The brakes screeched, and then there was a tremendous crash.
3.
I hate the crunching of someone eating crisps.
4.13.
The best sounds in the world, in no particular order, are the crunch of walking on a fresh layer of snow, the patter of rain on the roof while you're in bed, the crackling noise of an open fire, the sound of a golf ball dropping into the hole, the popping noise when you squeeze bubble wrap, people laughing at one of your jokes.
It only went halfway in!
The ding sound when a plane has landed and switched off the engines. The crashing of waves on a beach. Birds singing very early in the morning.
The worst sounds in the world, in no particular order, are the tap of the keys on a mobile phone when someone hasn't turned off the keyboard sound. The roar of a revving motorbike. The whine of a dentist's drill. The strange hum in your house that you can't locate. Someone eating popcorn at the cinema. The sound of someone filing their nails. Someone sniffing. People slurping their food. Someone else's child crying.
(4.14) 1.
My next door neighbours have just got a dog. I've always really liked dogs, but this one just absolutely drives me mad. It barks at everything. It barks at the rain. It barks at traffic. Barks at the wind. And it's got a really high-pitched, yappy bark. And yeah, it barks all day, all night. It drives me mad.
2.
A sound that I really can't stand, I actually detest this sound, is the sound of my daughter eating popcorn whenever we go to the cinema together. I always make her buy a small box because otherwise it takes her forever to finish and get to the bottom. Oh, but it's the crunch, the sound of the little kernels in her mouth, the chew, the all the sounds inside her mouth. It's just so irritating.
3.
I do this quite funny thing. So when my kids are in bed, I often go in and I just listen to them breathing when they're asleep, and it really calms me down, this sort of steady breathing, and it makes me feel really happy and calm and reassured that they're healthy and they're at home, and, well, actually also the fact that they're fast asleep. So I can get some time to myself, some peace and quiet.
4.
I find the sound of the sea just makes me feel relaxed. It makes me at peace. Doesn't matter if it's a gentle sea against a beach or ocean crashing against rocks. It just calms me down. I love it. I've even got an app on my phone of sea sounds which helps me if I'm travelling and I can't get to sleep somewhere. I always put that on. Helps me relax.
5.
I think it's when I hear the constant beeping of all my different kitchen appliances. The washing machine or the dishwasher, and when you think they're finished, but you don't know, and then it goes beep, and then a minute later beep, 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 and it gets louder, just so you know it's really finished what it's doing, it's talking to you. I just find it so annoying. It really annoys my husband too. You're sitting there trying to have a nice, relaxing evening, watching the TV, and then, one of you has to get up and go and attend to it, go and turn it off.
6.
Well, the sound of a baby laughing or giggling, I love that. I was watching something on YouTube the other day and with young babies and pets, and the babies were just giggling all over the place. They were roaring with laughter, and I thought it was one of the happiest, sweetest sounds I'd ever heard.
7.
Listening to music played very quietly so that you can't actually hear it. Music should be something that you want to hear properly and more loudly, not just there playing quietly, irritating you. And the other thing is background music, like lift music, that you don't want to hear at all. I don't like hearing any music unwillingly.
8.
Well, the sound of the train. I find it really relaxing because the sound fits perfectly along with the movement of the train moving along and the jolting backwards and forwards. But I do need to be sitting facing forwards rather than backwards because otherwise I feel really train sick.
4.15 Story 1. Story 2. Story 3.
Ooh. What's that noise?
What noise?
There's someone inside.
You open it.
No way! I'm too scared. You do it.
All right, here we go. Okay, ready?
Four 4.16. Story 1.
What are you doing? Is it a mosquito?
Oh, got it. At last. Well, go back to sleep.
Story 2.
Are you okay, sir? Is this your phone?
That's my phone! He's pinched it!
Story 3.
Ooh. What's that noise?
What noise?
There's someone inside.
You open it.
No way! I'm too scared. You do it.
All right, here we go. Okay, ready?
It's only the cat.
4.17. 1.
As far as I'm concerned, the sign is completely pointless.
2.
My feeling is that it's best to live and let live.
3.
In my view, that's their job.
4.
If you ask me, they're never going to work.
5.
Personally, I think that normal conversation is acceptable.
6.
I'd say the only way round it is to buy yourself a set of noise-cancelling headphones.